Hello everyone and welcome to The No Show. I'll be your host Nathan Orenstein, and today I'm going to be finishing my ranking of every M. Night Shyamalan movie. This is the second part of that ranking, so if you haven't seen the first video yet, go check it out. And I'm not going to repeat my whole intro spiel here, let's just get right into it. Coming in as M. Night Shyamalan's seventh best film is 2004's The Village. It's about a small village that lives in fear of the monsters that live in the woods that surround it. When one of the villagers gets critically wounded, Bryce Dallas Howard must pass through the woods to get medicine from a nearby city. The Village, to me, is M. Night Shyamalan's Let's Win an Oscar movie. The cast is stacked, featuring Bryce Dallas Howard, Joaquin Phoenix, Adrian Brody, William Hurt, Sigourney Weaver, and Brendan Gleeson. It's got an incredible score, along with easily the best cinematography of any of his films. It's also one of the most mature stories, and while it's still very much a genre film, it feels more rooted in realism and actual human issues than most of his other movies, while still providing twists and turns that are actually interesting. All that's to say, I think this movie is largely pretty boring. Broadly speaking, I do find the story and its direction to be pretty interesting for sure, but on a scene-to-scene level, it just doesn't do too much for me. For example, Bryce Dallas Howard's character is blind, and watching a blind woman navigate the woods on her own really is about as uninteresting as it sounds. As part of the story as a whole, I do see it as necessary in furthering things, and it does bring with it some interesting implications, but on its own, it's just not great to watch. The same can be said for a lot of this movie, unfortunately. It's a movie I respect a lot, and one that is certainly a huge step up from anything I talked about in the last video, but ultimately, it's not one I'm planning on going back to anytime soon. At number 6, we have 2015's The Visit. It follows a teenage girl and her younger brother as they go to stay with their estranged grandparents for the very first time. Things start to get real weird though, and they've got to figure out how to navigate the whole situation. Well, we've officially hit what I would consider to be Shyamalan's good movies, and I would recommend any of the films from this point forward. The Visit was a massive bounce-back movie for him. He had just made 4 of the worst movies of his career, and then made this low-budget found-footage horror movie as a sort of Hail Mary, and I think it's really good. Despite dabbling in horror elements his entire career, this is the first and only of his movies I'd call a true blue horror movie. There are certainly comedy elements here too though, and those are pretty hit or miss, with the 10-year-old wannabe rapper being particularly grating. But aside from that, I think this is great. Shyamalan's films are often plagued with awkward dialogue and interactions between characters, but I think that's a genuine strength in this film, really building the discomfort that this movie creates. The grandparents are just the perfect mix of sweet and unsettling, and they function as really mysterious antagonists of sorts. The Visit also features perhaps my favorite twist of Shyamalan's, and it's one that really throws fuel on the growing fire that is this film's third act. I imagine this won't be for everyone, but I think it's a surprisingly good found-footage horror film, especially considering it came out at the tail end of that trend. At number 5, we have 2016's Split. It follows James McAvoy as Kevin Wendell Crumb, a man with multiple personality disorder who abducts 3 teenage girls to be fed to a mysterious figure he calls the Beast. Split should honestly just be called the James McAvoy Show, because I'm not sure the last time a single actor carried a movie this much. He essentially plays 8 or so different characters in this movie, each being a different personality that Kevin has. They're all wildly different, with some having different accents, ages, and even genders, and McAvoy portrays them all incredibly well. I've seen this movie I think 4 times now, and his performance continues to be endlessly entertaining to me. I would describe the rest of the movie as good enough. Half of it concerns these girls trying to escape abduction from the underground facility where they're kept, and the other half is mostly conversations between one of the personalities and his therapist, who tries to understand who the Beast is that the personalities keep talking about. It's all a bit too drawn out for my taste, especially considering the movie really only takes place in 2 uninteresting locations, but it's a serviceable enough setup for James McAvoy to flex his acting range in. There are some flashback scenes, mostly for Anya Taylor-Joy's character, that tie things together in the climax, but I found them to kind of lead to a lackluster revelation, personally. Like I said, this is really the James McAvoy Show, and his shape-shifting performance alone makes this a good watch, even if the rest of the movie isn't quite at the same level of quality. At number 4, we have 2002's Signs. A family of 4 find crop circles on their farm, only to realize it's just the beginning of what looks to be an alien invasion. Signs is a movie that I think can feel a bit messy in terms of its execution, but it still comes out relatively strong due to how great its foundation is. Mel Gibson plays a former priest who lost his faith when his wife died in a car wreck 6 months prior. To me, he is the single most compelling character Shyamalan has ever written, and Gibson gives a truly fantastic performance playing him. Having him be the patriarch of this family as they try to understand a completely irrational event creates a really interesting dynamic, and his brush-ups with his more open-minded brother, played by Joaquin Phoenix, provide some great moments. The movie gets especially tense in the back half, and while I don't personally think the climax really works all that well in the end, I think it does a good job of putting a period on the themes of the film. Above all that though, Signs is just wildly entertaining, providing some of the funniest moments of Shyamalan's career, along with some of his best action scenes. And the Brazilian birthday party scene has achieved legendary status in the horror community for a reason. This is a smart, genre-bending blockbuster that's entertaining regardless of how deeply you want to engage with its themes, and it's one that I'd recommend to just about anyone. At number 3, we have 2023's Knock at the Cabin. It concerns a family of 3 vacationing in a cabin in the woods who are approached and subsequently tied up by a group of 4 that claim they're there to stop the apocalypse. They tell the family that they must choose to sacrifice one of themselves or else all of humanity will die. This might seem like a recency bias type pick, but I've seen this twice now, and it held up just as well on a rewatch for me. I personally think that this is Shyamalan's best written movie. He forces these characters to make an impossible decision while they struggle to believe a single thing their captors tell them. Meanwhile, their captors are steadfast in their belief that they are there to prevent the apocalypse. The combination of struggling with rationality, emotions, and faith in the unknown makes for a super interesting watch, and one that'll have you questioning everything along with its characters. It helps that this is probably Shyamalan's best ensemble cast he's ever had, and while it isn't all amazingly acted or anything, it's still very strong and sells the intensity of the situation and these people's convictions. There are certainly stretches stuck in this cabin that feel a bit slow, and the climax is something I'm still not sure I'm sold on, but I think watching this battle of beliefs play out and progress makes this one of Shyamalan's most thought-provoking and interesting watches. At number 2, we have 2000's Unbreakable. Bruce Willis plays David Dunn, the sole survivor of a train crash who escaped completely unscathed. Samuel L. Jackson plays Elijah Price, a comic shop owner confined to a wheelchair due to incredibly fragile bones. Elijah discovers David and convinces him that he might have superhuman abilities. Unbreakable is an entirely original superhero story, and it keeps things pretty much entirely down to earth. David Dunn is a simple man who does security at football games, and his inability to accept that he might be special creates a nice dichotomy with his son and Elijah, who both want to believe he's something greater. When the superhero-y stuff does happen, it's all done in such a way that remains pretty realistic to the world we live in, rather than the massive scale stuff we're so accustomed to these days. But even before the superhero-y stuff happens, the movie is constantly moving and building its characters, and this thing really has zero fat on it at all. It all culminates in a fantastic final act and a fantastic final reveal. David Dunn and Elijah Price are such great counterparts to one another, and watching how their relationship builds into its boiling point is exciting from start to finish. It's also clear that Shyamalan truly is a comic book fan himself, sticking to classic tropes and visuals while also incorporating a meta-analysis of them into his story. Put simply, Unbreakable is one of the best superhero movies I've ever seen, and its realism and originality feels like a breath of fresh air in today's oversaturated landscape. And finally, M. Night Shyamalan's best film is 1999's The Sixth Sense. A child psychologist, played by Bruce Willis, starts having sessions with his new patient, played by Haley Joel Osment, an 11-year-old who claims to see dead people. I hate to have such a boring pick as number 1, but it really couldn't have been any other movie. The Sixth Sense is the movie that put Shyamalan on the map, and he's never quite been able to capture the magic he had with this one. I think it's mostly been boiled down to its I see dead people concept and its insanely iconic twist, but it really is so much more than that. At its core, this is a devastating family drama, with single mother Toni Collette struggling to understand what her son goes through, and a psychologist who pours his life into his work so much that it destroyed his relationship with his wife. Of course, the whole seeing dead people stuff also leads to some great horror moments, but they almost all serve to support the emotional development of the story in one way or another. The fact that it can work as strongly as a horror thriller as it does a family drama is baffling, but Shyamalan melds the two genres seamlessly to create his best film yet. Its emotional core is also held together by a masterful performance by Haley Joel Osment, who gives one of the best performances I've ever seen from a child of any age, earning him an Oscar nomination at age 11. And regarding its iconic twist, I think part of the reason it works so well is that it elevates the entire film that came before it, but it doesn't make the film what it is. This is a great film without the twist, and it becomes an even better and more rewatchable one with it. The Sixth Sense is without a doubt Shyamalan's best film, and it's a film I can watch over and over again. Well, that concludes my ranking of every M. Night Shyamalan movie. I hope you enjoyed part 2 of this series, and if you've seen any of these movies before, I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And of course, feel free to leave a like and subscribe if you're new. I've been Nathan Orenstein with The No Show. Thanks for watching.